Right, so as we can see from the circles, which are based, one is based on Quebec City and the other one on Goose Bay. We're gonna enter ETOPS soon here, so we're gonna have a quick look at the weather and search for Charlie Yankee Quebec Bravo. And it is a little bit raining, but still 25 statute miles, so it's okay. So the weather is good there in Quebec City. And at the Goose, talk to me Goose. The Goose Bay broken at 1700 feet, 15 statute miles, so that's good. So we can initially go into ETOPS. I'll check also Keflavik, which is the second ETOPS airport, and Keflavik is good as well. So then we've got Murmansk. We're not gonna be anywhere near Murmansk for a while, but Murmansk at the moment is Kavok, and the last one is Ulaanbaatar, which is ZMUB, and that is Kavok as well in Mongolia. So the 4 ETOPS airports are Kavok, so we're good. So initially we can enter ETOPS, there's no issues there. Okay, that's a very good question actually, Kim FPS. Yeah, normally you use Vref plus 5, that is correct. For the 777, usually you leave it at VRF plus 5 because normally you use the auto throttle. The auto throttle is disconnected, is connected. I mean, until landing almost. So when the auto throttle is connected, you only use VRF plus 5. If you disconnect the auto throttle at some point on the approach, then you would indeed use half of the wind with a minimum of VRF plus 5 still, so you kind of assume that you have at least 10 knots of headwind. But let's say you have 15 knots of headwind or 20 knots of headwind, then you will take half of the wind if the auto throttle is disconnected. So they kind of consider that the auto throttle does a good job at protecting the speed, whereas they consider that if you control the thrust manually, you're maybe not gonna do as much of a good job controlling the speed. So the procedure wants you to increase the additive on the VRF. So half of the wind will be correct. If you have an engine failure and you use VRF plus 20, VRF 20, I mean, then yes, you do have to still add 5 knots to that. So VRF 20 plus 5, that is correct. Yeah, you still whatever VRF you get, you always add 5 knots, regardless of if it's VRF 20 or VRF 30 or VRF 35, or if sometimes, as is the case for some non-normal situations, it's sometimes like VRF 30 plus 20. So you would work out what your VRF 30 is, add 20 knots to that to get the correct approach speed for that particular situation, and then add 5 knots for the extra buffer on the VRF. For the 737, yeah, that's correct. That would be VRF plus half of the wind with the minimum of plus 5. But as I said, if the wind is 20 knots, then it will be VRF plus 10. That is correct. So that's it. We have entered ETOPS. We just passed 420 nautical miles based on Quebec City Airport, and we're continuing kind of northeast bound. We're gonna remain outside of the 420 miles from Goose Bay as well, and then we're heading north. Really. After that, there's no many more options. Further north, you've got that base called Iqaluit, which is ICAO code Charlie Yankee Fox Bravo, where you can land with a 777, but after that, yeah, there's no many options up there. Maybe also Thule, of course, in Greenland. As you remember, we had a video on the YouTube channel landing in Greenland, and in particular in Thule and in Sandestrom. But yeah, there's no many options once you go very far north. So what I wanted to do as well is check the fuel, see if the flight plan is working out nicely or not. And at 50.76 we should be with 118.8, and we had 119 plus 1, so we made 300 kilos. So I'll take a note of that. Yes, on those flights, of course, there's like plenty of time to kind of, you know, check your weather, check your all the polar procedures. As we said earlier on, there's no tracks up there. It's all like free routing, and mostly flying with latitude and longitude waypoints. And once you get into Russian airspace, as I said, it's following the airways there into Russia. Into Russia, you don't really fly latitude and longitude. So. And yeah, I think I pointed out as well. You need to check your tracks and distances when you have latitude and longitude waypoints. That's quite important to make sure that the waypoints inserted in the FMC are correct, and you're not gonna do a mistake as far as the navigation is concerned. Keep an eye on the fuel temperature as well. If we look at the FMC, the minimum fuel temperature at the moment is set at minus 37. I think we can take it down to minus 43 or minus 47. I think it's minus 43, and then you'll get the alert a couple of degrees before it gets too cold. Quickly have a look at this, so I'm giving the correct information. This is, so yeah, you're supposed to enter minus 43 here for the minimum fuel temperature, so that you'll get like the warning. a couple of degrees before it's too late. And then thank you for the follow. I missed the alert. Yeah, you enter like minus 43, so the freezing point is minus 47, and so you'll get like a bit of prior notice, maybe like 4 degrees before it gets too cold, so that you can try to warm up the fuel. So they say like to warm up the fuel, basically to fly a little bit faster, or otherwise to descend to a warmer air. So we are now well into ETOPS. We are kind of far away from anything really. Now I've got a flight plan in VATSIM, which is good. So it was probably because the route was too long. JustLoy77, welcome to the stream. Good afternoon / evening, sir. Thank you very much. Okay, took off from EGNX. Very stormy. Ooh, at the edge of stalling. Oh my god, I was really bumpy then. Good, Daffys. Thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoy the streams. I enjoy it as well. I'm having a good time here. Some people might think I'm a little bit crazy, but yeah, I enjoy it. I like it. So yeah, we are well into ETOPS. Goose Bay, that's the circle for Goose Bay. So Goose Bay is behind us at about 4 o'clock. So it's already way behind. Quebec City is now also like, it's long gone, so I'll get rid of it, and I'll put the next one CYFB Iqaluit CYFB, which is a decent size airport. You can put like a 737 down there, no problem. And then we'll be looking at Thule, the US Air Force base on the northwestern corner of Greenland. Thule, we'll put 420 miles as well. So there's a couple of, as you can see, Thule, the circle is kind of cutting at the top here. So there's a couple of places you can go to on a long flight like this in these remote areas. Maxes, thank you very much for the follow. And yeah, you're not kind of in the middle of nowhere like for hours and hours and hours. You've got like a couple of anchor points like Iqaluit down here, Thule further down. Actually, you can see here on the navigation display you've got BGSF as well, which is Narsvarsvik Strömfjord or whatever the name is, which featured in the YouTube video about diverting into Greenland. So yeah, there's a couple of places you can go to. It's not plenty of places, but yeah, still a few. So it's not too bad. So at the moment we are, if you want to know your current position in terms of latitude and longitude, of course in the simulator you can go like shift Z, and you get the, you know, up here in red you get the latitude and the longitude. That's the kind of simulator way of doing it. But the aircraft, of course, we don't have that. And the way to find out about your current position, if you want to know where you are, is to go to the init ref page here, which by default at this stage takes you to the approach ref page. Then you go back to the index here, and then go to the pause, so the second prompt on the left here, the second button, pause, and you've got your GPS position here, basically. So you can see that we're kind of following 70 degrees west at the moment, kind of going up, maintaining 70 degrees west of longitude, and we passed almost 62 degrees north, so we're already quite far north at this stage. But that would be the way to kind of work out your current position, and you can see the numbers are changing constantly here. So yeah, that's the way we use on the aircraft to pinpoint at any moment where we are. So of course we would check the weather here at Iqaluit, CYFP, and at the moment it's 30 statute miles, 10 degrees, so it's a nice enough day. So if we need to land there, then we can certainly do that, there's no problem. So I think I've already left I've left now mainland Canada. I'm not very familiar too much with the geography, but now we're kind of we've left mainland Canada now, and is that chunk of land ahead. I think we'll look outside. Yeah, there's a few islands and stuff there, and a little bit. Yeah, but after that we're pretty much heading for the northwestern side of Greenland. So we're already like quite far, I would say, and a little bit in the middle of nowhere already. And at this stage, I believe we would still be, as far as air traffic control is concerned, if I remember well, you'll still be kind of in touch with, I think it's Edmonton, and kind of talking to them still on VHF, because there'll be like stations, even if it's quite far north, there will still be some VHF stations there. And then further up at waypoint Dapak, I believe, which we don't really see here. Yeah, Dapak here, this waypoint here. Then at Dapak we get into the Thunderstorm FIR, which actually is controlled by Iceland, and at this stage then will be handed over to Iceland radio mainly, and also CPDLC. So at this stage you would already be in CPDLC contact with Edmonton and have the VHF radio as a backup. Maybe a little bit further up, maybe it would only be HF with Edmonton, possibly, but I don't think actually Edmonton doesn't have like a specific HF radios. You actually speak to a Gander radio, the same as when you cross the North Atlantic. So yeah, you will speak to the Gander radio stations, and and have CPDLC with Edmonton itself. And then, as I said, as you get to Dapak on this route, you would be transferred on the CPDLC with Reykjavik with Iceland, and speak to Iceland radio on the HF as well. So in that area of the world, communications can be quite difficult. The further north you go, with space weather and with all the magnetic field and stuff like that, it's sometimes difficult to to get clear HF communications. And there's also a bit of shadow as far as like satellite communications are concerned. Maybe not so much where we are in this current location here, but maybe a little bit further west and a little bit further north. There's a known kind of satellite shadow there, so you don't really get proper satellite communications. So for like CPDLC and things like that, sometimes you kind of lose all communications basically. So you wouldn't get like CPDLC communication via satellite, and if the atmospheric conditions are not good, then you would also lose HF communication. So once you're up there, sometimes you're a little bit on your own, and you can be on your own sometimes for maybe an hour, maybe for 2, sometimes maybe up to about 3 hours. So it's a little bit intimidating in a sense. Kilex Phil, thank you very much for the follow. Yeah, it can be intimidating a little bit, because you would expect to have like communications everywhere, and you think, well, I'm on a flight plan, I'm like an IFR flight, commercial flight and stuff, but yeah, you would possibly at times for quite a significant amount of time, you would lose all communications, and you would pretty much be on your own. That's maybe something that the public in general is not aware of. People think, oh well, oh, that's quite fancy, we are like heading towards like the northern latitudes, and we're gonna fly like close to the pole. Oh, that's cool and stuff. But what you have to realize is that obviously it's a very hostile environment, and navigation wise it's okay. I mean, the aircraft will navigate and you're not gonna get lost or anything. That's not the issue. But as far as like communication and possible like assistance you can receive from air traffic control, it can be quite restrictive, and it's all due basically to the location of the place, because you're very far north. You're close to the magnetic North Pole, with all the magnetic like interference, all the space weather, and HF like propagation is not very good in this area. And as I mentioned, like CPDLC, in some areas up there, there's quite actually a big area, but as I said, it's a little bit maybe further west and north than where we are at the moment. But there's a known area of like satellite shadow. Basically, it's like a black hole, so you wouldn't get any satellite communication as well. So obviously, in terms of airport like options, there's not a lot. I've just mentioned Iqaluit down here, then Tula in Greenland, maybe a Sandestrom as well, a little bit further east from where we are at the moment, and once you are like pretty much close to the top, you can possibly then come back down towards Iceland, or go to Svalbard, for example. But yeah, the options are far and few between, if I can say that, if that makes sense. And at the moment it's summer, so the weather is not too bad. But you can imagine a place like Tulu in the winter, or like Iqaluit here, wouldn't be very very good. The chances are you will get maybe into like bad weather, stormy, snowy winter day. The state of the runway as well would probably the runway would probably be contaminated with, like, you know, snow, and there'll be like snow everywhere. They would probably clean a little bit, but still, you know, the runway wouldn't be in a good state. So if you think you have to you know, to divert an aircraft into these places, it's not a very good prospect. At the moment, you see, we've got like 318 tons. If there is an engine failure, like right now, obviously you would go to Iqaluit. There, it's the closest place, and you know, for like an engine failure, for example, you're supposed to go to the nearest suitable airport. So that will be the place to go to. You're not gonna fly ETOPS. ETOPS, once you are in the air, ETOPS goes out of the window. ETOPS is just a planning exercise. So if you have like an engine failure now, you wouldn't go to the closest designated ETOPS airport, which at this stage is still Goose Bay, I think. That's why we picked up. And yeah, you will go to Iqaluit, but imagine like in the winter with like snow, and you've got like still like 300 tons of the aircraft. At the moment, you would have to jettison the fuel, and then once you're on the ground, it's not the game is not over yet, because you've got 300 people in the aircraft, and you need to if you had an engine failure, of course the aircraft is not going anywhere, and you've got to put these people into a hotel. But in these remote little towns and airports, you don't have like a Hilton hotel and a Sheraton hotel like next to the airport. You know, it's if you have maybe like a B&B or a small hotel with maybe, I don't know, 50 rooms or something, that would be like exceptional, you know. So there's a lot of things to consider, and it's not an easy area to operate into, you know. There's more than meets the eye. I think the public in general is not really aware of all these things, but yeah. Hey, Pilot Jeff, ça va, merci. How are you doing? CPDLC, no, CPDLC is just like text messages. It doesn't enable voice. So CPDLC is like, yeah, sending either like pre-formatted messages, which is like 99% of the case. Otherwise, you can also like kind of send like what they call free text messages, so you can actually type something yourself. But otherwise, it's all like pre-formatted. So so once you go into the com here, but here it's not simulated in the aircraft here, but you will go to ATC, and then there will be like another menu opening with like various options, and all the messages are like pre-formatted. So for example, there'll be like a message for like a climb clearance, you know, requesting higher level, requesting a new route, requesting like deviation due to the weather, requesting like a new speed, all these things. So yeah. So you see today at this stage is like 70 knots of wind. The wind is maybe, well, it's not a headwind, but it's not a cross. It's kind of halfway across. So maybe today the route is not that suitable, and that's why I said earlier on, like the in these areas, because well the area of operation is very wide, and it's free routing, so the airlines can pretty much choose, you know, the way they navigate. They're not restricted by airways and all that stuff. So because you've got that freedom of flight planning, you know, they try to make it to take advantage of the weather situation, and every day the routes change. That's all right, guys. So it's still delayed, of course. I'm curious, the whole flight might actually be in delayed, because then once you get onto the Asian side of the flight, then no, we're supposed to land. Thank you for the follow, Smilos. We're supposed to land at what time? .615Z or something. No, a little bit earlier than 615Z actually. Wow, the schedule was very generous there. No, we're supposed to land at, like, let's say like 5 o'clock Zulu. So that will be 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Hong Kong. So yeah, kind of daytime in Asia. So we might have like daylight all the way across. The sun might it might not set at all. So yeah, it's quite special up there. It's an area as well in the winter, which is gonna be in the dark for pretty much 24 hours. In the summer, it's daylight pretty much 24 hours as well. Then maybe as you get towards like the equinox, so like kind of spring or autumn, it's gets maybe dark a little bit, but still have like maybe 12 and 12 or something like that, daytime and nighttime. But in the winter, I mean, it's dark like 24 hours a day, so you've got to factor that in as well. If you get to a place like Tula, which is gonna be like in the dark, you know, maybe not the 24 hours, but maybe like 22 hours of darkness and 2 hours or 3 hours of daytime. It's difficult, you know. It is like the obviously like the area for like the northern lights, you know, and depending on the atmospheric conditions, you know, you could have you know, a northern light show for maybe 2-3 hours at a time. You know, it would kind of follow you as you cross the whole area, and it is beautiful, but basically, you know, the northern lights is just the reaction of the atmosphere with all the space weather. So what you see is actually like all the radiations from space, like hitting the atmosphere. So it's not very good. Smilos, bonjour. So yeah, and obviously you're like flying in that area, so your body is kind of exposed to all these radiations. That's something as well that the general public is not really aware of, but as you fly like up north like this, you know, you get submitted to space weather and radiations and all these good things, which if you fly like once a year or something is maybe not too much, but if you do it a little bit too often, then yeah, you get radiated a little bit. The wing flex is amazing, huh? The way. So yeah, today we're gonna get there with a little bit less fuel than the other day on the Melbourne flight. Just because instead of taking a contingency of 5%, I took a contingency of 20 minutes. So like for like, you know, flight planning, basically you have like several options for the contingency. Basically in any flight planning exercise, you've got to include what we call the contingency, and the contingency is basically to cater for any unexpected deviations on the fuel burn. So that could be due to you know, the winds not being exactly as forecast, maybe not flying the levels which were planned, maybe having to deviate because of weather or any unexpected circumstances which are not like catered for in the flight plan. And the way to calculate the contingency, there's like several options. The first option is to take 5% of the fuel burn for the whole trip. Then the another option is to take 3% of that fuel trip, of that trip fuel. Sorry, I'm getting my English mixed up there. So yeah, 3% of the trip fuel. And then for like flights like this, you can take like 20 minutes of your trip fuel, which makes it quite interesting actually, because if you have to take 5% or even like 3% of like 15 hours like worth of fuel, it's gonna be quite a lot. I mean, the other day for like a 14-hour flight, it was almost 6 tons. And nowadays, you know, the flight planning softwares are like quite accurate, and the wind forecast are usually quite accurate. ATC usually like is accommodating as well as far as the routes and the levels are concerned. So there's never gonna be like an unexpected like fuel burn of like up to 6 tons on a 14-hour flight. It's never gonna be the case. So what they do with like those 20 minutes is that on 16-hour flight or 15-hour flight, like 20 minutes is only going to be about usually around 2.5 tons, and that's obviously like a more like acceptable amount of fuel to take as contingency fuel, instead of, you know, as I said, like 3% or 5%. Yeah, since 3 years it's coming in 12 days. On the 777, like any other aircraft actually, I understand, and it was certainly the case on the 737, you declare a fuel emergency when you think you're gonna be landing below the final reserve fuel, which is basically like 30 minutes worth of fuel. So if you think you're gonna be landing below that amount, because, well, you know, you have like 4 tons and you're still like quite far from the airport or something, then that's when you would declare a fuel emergency. Yeah. Usually, yeah, you're right. On the 777 is about 3 tons, but it depends obviously on your weight and things like that. So your flight plan will tell you exactly how much it is. Today, if you look at the flight plan for this particular flight, and if we consider that this would be like an accurate flight plan, today on this flight the final reserve is 3,170 kilos. So let's say like 3.2 tons. At 3.2 tons, then you will be into a fuel emergency situation. Yeah, the last 30 minutes basically. It doesn't mean though that the aircraft is not flying anymore once you get below there. I mean, I had like in a simulator exercise, you know, the instructor taking me down to like 2.2 or 2.1, and actually it was funny because, you know, before we got to that stage, you know, I told the guy, you know, I said in the exercise, I said to him like, hey man, we're gonna, you know, I'm gonna divert now because I can see like there's gonna be, you know, he was kind of wasting my time and we were holding, and I could feel like he was not gonna let me go, you know, and we would get quite low on fuel. So I said to him, I said like, we're diverting, you know. And then he kind of like stopped the exercise and he goes to me, say, oh, why are you diverting so early? I said, well, you know, there's like I can kind of like see that there's a lot of traffic ahead of us. There's gonna be further delays, and then we're gonna get stuck, you know, because that's the way they are, you know. They kind of playing up a little bit in the simulator sometimes, and they play daft, and then you get stuck. So the guy said, okay, well, he said, don't worry, you know, we'll kind of take the fuel as low as we can, and then we'll see. And he said, oh, in a sense, you know, I'll show you that you can maybe do it with less fuel than what you expect. So I go, okay, yeah, fair enough. It's just a bit of practice and an exercise, no problem. So off we went, you know. The fuel like came down, still holding, and then started like the approach, and the way the fuel looked like was we were going to land maybe with with maybe like 3.5, 3.4 maybe, so maybe a couple of 100 kilos above the reserve, and everything was well. We're like on short final and everything, okay, like the weather was suitable and the wind was good and no problems at all. And maybe like at 500 feet or 400 feet on the approach, and he goes, go around. I'm like, man, I knew you were going to do that to me, you know. And he pushed me like down to the minimum fuel almost, and then the guy goes, go around, you know. So okay, go around, and then you're like, well, straight away as you go around with these with this amount of fuel, you're basically into like a fuel emergency situation. So I mean, I knew this would happen, but kind of played the game. And so yeah, obviously like the fuel came down quite quickly, and then fortunately there was like an airport nearby we could go to, so we managed to kind of divert then straight away to the other airport, and landed there, yeah, with about 2.2 or 2.1. But so yeah, it kind of shows you that the aircraft will fly. I mean, it's not because you get below your final reserve that it's game over, you know. You still have 30 minutes, but it is like it is a bit of an awkward situation, you know, and it's not something you want to be. It's not a situation you want to find yourself in. But yeah, I knew he was going to do something like that, you know. He said, we'll just take it like down to, you know, 3.4, 3.5. You see how it works, you know. So, well, I kind of know how it works, but I was kind of expecting something from, you know, from the back burner, so to speak. And then we are like on short final, and it goes like, oh, go around, traffic is not vacated yet or something. It's like, oh man, you make me go around with like 3.5 tons of fuel, you realize? So yeah, but yeah, the aircraft will still fly, huh? Even with 500 kilos of fuel in the tanks, it will still fly. As long as you have fuel, it will fly, but then I'm sure you're well, it's in a simulator, it's okay. I mean, the consequences are not important, but in real, if you are finding yourself with only maybe like 10-15 minutes worth of fuel, I'm sure your heartbeat will start going like boom 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 boom. No, in a fuel emergency, it's Mayday. The call will be Mayday, 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 fuel. Mayday 3 times and fuel. No, in a fuel emergency, it's Mayday, it's not pan. So first you would declare a minimum fuel. So you will declare minimum fuel, for example, if there are like delays at the airport and you're in a holding pattern, and they tell you, okay, expected approach time is in 10 minutes. So you calculate, okay, like holding for 10 minutes, I'm gonna burn like maybe about a ton of fuel, and then it's gonna take maybe another ton and a half to do the approach, and that keeps me above the final reserve. I'm good, you know. We can still do it. But then if ATC says, oh, now the delay is no longer just 10 minutes, it's 15 minutes, then like the extra 5 minutes is obviously like burning maybe another 500 kilos. That takes you like below the final reserve, below the last 30 minutes. So in that case you would inform ATC, say, okay, minimum fuel. That means that you changed my previously given clearance, which was only 10 minutes of holding. Now you give me 15 minutes. If I wait 15 minutes and then do the approach, I'm gonna be below my final reserve. So at that stage you will declare minimum fuel to kind of try to expedite things, and basically ask ATC to give you a priority. So you would declare minimum fuel, but then if ATC was not doing anything, and then you were finding yourself like in a situation where like fuel was still, you know, going down, and then you had nowhere to go, and then you would think that, okay, I've got a ton left, and it's gonna take a ton and a half to do the approach, and I'm gonna be below the final reserve. There you would like throw the toys out of the pram, and you would declare, yeah, the mayday fuel, yeah, the fuel emergency, like a full fuel emergency. Yeah, these are not like good situations not to find yourself in, but yeah, that's you can take it down to those to this extent, yeah. That's a good question, prime addiction. That's a very good question, a relevant question. At night, the logo light, which obviously would lit the tail, the logo light is actually off. Well, at least in my company, but I believe it's probably the same elsewhere, because on the 737 as well we were not using the logo light, and I think basically the reason is to save the bulb, really. That's really the main reason. Instead of having the lights on for like hours, above 10,000 feet the logo light is switched off, so that you save on the bulb life. That's really all there is to it, really. That's the main reason behind. It's all down to economics, and also it's I mean, I'm not sure, I'm sure like the bulb itself is not like doesn't cost a lot of money for the airline to replace. Obviously it's not like a bulb in your house, it's a little bit of a bigger bulb and stronger and stuff, but it's also like in an awkward situation to reach. So if they have to go and fix the bulb, they will require probably some sort of a lift and kind of get access. I think the actual hold on. I think the light, I might be wrong, but I believe if you look at the tail, I mean the light is not on the tail here, the bulb. I think it's actually like it's like almost like a spotlight that kind of like sends the light to the tail, and I think the light is somewhere like sitting on the stabilizer there, and it kind of you know, shines the light at the tail. But obviously the bulb is not here on the tail itself. I think the lights are up here. But if you kind of like see the you know, the aircraft on the ground, to access the stabilizer, I mean, it's very high, so you need like a lift. So it's an awkward like position to reach. So if they can avoid like, you know, this sort of maintenance, then obviously they will. No, it's not happened to me for the moment to fly with the broken APU, but we can certainly fly with the broken APU. Yeah, that's allowed. I think earlier on, Future Airline Pilot was talking about the MEL. That's one of the things which are catered for by the MEL. John Pitts, thank you for the follow. And yeah, the MEL would let you go without a functioning APU. Of course, there will be restrictions, a lot of operational restrictions. I'm not sure actually would be able to go ETOPS 207 minutes like we are on this flight. I think there will be a restriction. I'm not sure if it's 180 or 120. We'd have to look at the book, but there would certainly be an ETOPS restriction with non-functioning APU. And also for just like to start the engines, you don't have bleed there from the APU to start the engines, so you would have to connect you know, a ground air starter to the aircraft and start one engine with the ground air, and then do a cross bleed start to start the second engine. So there will be a lot of, you know, operational considerations to take into account, but it's feasible. You know, you can do it. Prime Addiction, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the stream. And same thing as well when you get to the other side. Once you arrive at your destination, normally we turn the APU on about a minute and a half before getting to the gate. So that once the APU is running, we can shut down the engines. But of course, if your APU is not working at all, then if you shut down the engines, you're gonna lose all your electrics. You know, your aircraft is gonna become all like almost like cold and dark. Almost, it will just be like the main instruments with the battery. So yeah, you can't do that. So if your APU is not working, then once you get to stand, you need to shut down maybe one engine on the right hand side, let the ground staff like plug in the ground electrics, and then you can shut down the second engine, because if you shut down the engines with no APU working, then it's gonna go zzz. I know you're gonna lose everything. So, and if it's at night, the cabin is gonna get in the dark. So that's not very good. It doesn't look good for the passengers. You know, like, oh shit, what's going on? So yeah, but yeah, you can definitely go with the broken APU. I think before on the 737 it's happened to me, because I remember like doing like a start with the ground air starter thing, and then do a cross bleed start and stuff. So on the 737 it's happened. On the 777 it's not happened to me. I've done it in the simulator, but not in real. Yeah, the wing lights maybe for the outside inspection, yeah, but in flight we wouldn't really have them on either. Sorry, I missed the follow alert. Yeah, for the wing lights only for the outside inspection, really. No problem, Prime Addiction. Does answer your question, Airbus God? So yeah, there's the MEL basically, like, you know, covers all the systems. You know, they pretty much like thought about everything as far as the systems are concerned. And Undo, thank you for the follow. And pretty much any single failure is catered for in the MEL, the minimum equipment list. So any item which is broken is covered. Some items are obviously like a no-go. For example, if your flaps are not working properly, or your flight controls or something vital is not working, then it's a no-go item. You're not going anywhere. But something like the APU, the aircraft can fly safely. You obviously are a little bit, as I said, there's all these things I mentioned that it's a little bit of a pain in the backside, but the aircraft can fly safely. I mean, because even as far as the electrics are concerned, I mean, once the engines are running, you've got your two generators, you've got your backup generators. You still have like a bit of redundancy, so it's still acceptable to go and fly with no APU. But yeah, there are, like, you know, all these things to consider. But yeah, if it's the flaps, the flight controls, you know, yeah, like I said, it's a no-go, of course. So that's another very good question Airbus got. Earlier on we did the APU to PAX takeoff, and personally I prefer the APU to PAX takeoff. But as far as the performance is concerned, it's actually giving you the same result, because what you actually do is take away the bleed air that goes to the air conditioning system, and you keep it, like, you know, within the engine, so that kind of increases a little bit the engine power, basically, to give you a better takeoff performance. So the result as far as the takeoff performance is concerned is exactly the same with PAX off or APU to PAX. It's exactly the same. The good thing with APU to PAX is that the APU kind of initially, like, pressurizes the cabin a little bit. Of course, then the system needs to be reconfigured. So at 1500 feet, then when you switch the APU off, the system, because it's, I mean, obviously it's all automatic, the system all reconfigures itself, and then the bleeds go back to the PAX, and then the whole air conditioning system and pressurization is again working normally. But if you take off with the PAX off, and the APU wouldn't be running, straight away you're kind of you're not pressurized, basically. So it's a little bit more tricky, I would say. So if you have to, like, boost your takeoff performance, I would rather use like APU to PAX than PAX off. Yeah. And the real simulators, the scenery is actually not that great. It's fairly basic. The terrain is kind of realistic, because they've got to for example, when you go to airports which are situated in a mountainous area, or the terrain, the shape of the mountains and stuff has to look realistic, because, you know, you're supposed to have the same kind of visuals. So it has to match reality, and it has to be realistic, therefore. But like the airport scenery and the textures and stuff are very, very basic. So if they could have something like you know, we have here in Prepared or even in Flight Simulator, all these nice textures and be in a real simulator, even if it was not moving, but at least have the whole kind of flight deck like real size. That would be like, that would be fantastic. But hey, it's you know. Wow, that's snow. Oh good god, check the snow now. Even in the summer, like they've got like snowy textures. There's a few hills there, a few little mountains. There's like a nice few, like a fjord actually here almost. So obviously, if you fly like in these areas, like during daytime and the weather is clear, it's absolutely like spectacular. You know, you would spend a lot of your time, like, you know, looking outside, and it's obviously like flying like this over like the remote northern part of Canada, or over Greenland and all these places. It's obviously like a place that not many people see, and you are like, you know, quite privileged to be able to see all these places from the air, of course, at 35,000 feet, whatever. But yeah, you still it's an amazing sight. Yeah, so Iqaluit is gonna be kind of behind us now. So we can delete it. Goose Bay is way behind, so we can delete it. Thule, we're now entering 420 nautical miles to Thule. So it's pretty much the place to go to now. The weather was fine when we last checked it. The forecast was okay. And then, yeah, maybe Keflavik in Iceland, but that would be quite far down again. And one little place that I flew on stream to once, Svalbard, that's Norwegian island, which is kind of between Greenland and Norway, basically, kind of in that area, which is Echo November Sierra Bravo, where you can possibly land the 777 there. It's not a problem. It's a bit of a short runway, but it's still more than 2,000 meters. So if you're at a normal landing weight with something like auto brake 4 or auto brake max, you would land no problem. Svalbard. All the forecasts were okay before the flight, and the actual weather now, 250 at 10 kilometers, yeah, 5 degrees. Yeah, it's good weather. But yeah, today, you know, I wanted to do that polar flight, so here we are. Obviously, hopefully, we'll manage to get all the way to Hong Kong, and that'll be nice. Oh, if you've just noticed now, we've got grid here that's appeared. So that's the grid heading. But we're still in magnetic heading. Fairly soon the the track, actually, because it's not heading at the moment, it's a track, will get that will like automatically change to true once we get into the magnetic the unreliable magnetic area, which is a little bit further north. Also, once we're gonna enter the kind of oceanic part of it, because there will be an oceanic part to it after waypoint Dapak, where we get into we kind of leave Canadian airspace to get into kind of Greenland airspace at Dapak. Then it's a little bit like over the Atlantic, flying like a Mach number, so I'll set the Mach number at Dapak. I will fly decimal 83. So once we get to Dapak, because we've set decimal 83 there, as we pass that waypoint, it will automatically increase the speed to decimal 83. And then once we get to the other side, which I think was Binta, to get into Russian domestic airspace, then you would get back to a normal speed. Thank you for the follow, Michaelski 3322. Welcome to the stream. So here on the other side, once you get into domestic airspace, again you're not tied to a fixed Mach number, so you can kind of fly your econ speed. And that will be at Binta, I think. Yeah, Binta, you enter. You leave Murmansk Oceanic, and you get into Norilsk. So that's like in in Russia. So at Binta, you go back to econ. So you can enter econ, and then it will go back to the rest of the route will be on econ speed. Execute that. Thank you guys for the follow. Who was that? Sefa, thank you very much. Welcome to the stream, sir. That's something I'm not sure if it's a simulator thing, if it's a Boeing thing. I've certainly not seen that in the aircraft I fly. We don't have that great thing. The reference, the heading reference will change to true at some point automatically. That it does in the aircraft I fly. But having the grid like this, I'm not really sure. I've never seen that before. It's a bit like sometimes you get the angle of attack reference here. I've never seen that either. So no, Russia is now in feet. Yeah, they made the change. The only thing is that around airports, for example, in Moscow, I think, for example, they still fly in meters QFE, which also makes things a little bit more difficult. So instead of using QNH, which is basically the altitude over like sea level, they use QFE, which is the height over the airport. Mirland Pierre, thank you very much for the follow. Welcome to the stream. So yeah, meters QFE is a little bit of a pain in the backside, but usually, for example, in Moscow, there's not a lot of altitudes. The transition level is quite low, and then on the arrival procedures, or well, on the approach procedures, I should say, there's only 2 or 3 altitudes. And on the charts, usually there's a conversion, so the height is converted into an altitude, so you would refer to the chart to find the equivalent in feet and in altitude. and yeah, ATC will tell you, I don't know, descend to 800 meters, so you know that it's 800 meters, so 800 meters will be, I don't know, maybe about 2,500 feet. They would give you the QNH, so you would set the QNH, you know, accordingly, and that will be it. So it's just around the airport, really. It's not en route. It's not like China. En route is actually not too bad, I find. I mean, you know, like flying in China with the meters, once you're in the cruise, they say, okay, like maintain like 10,700 meters, or then they will go like, say, climb like at the moment 31,000 feet. That will actually be like 311, and 311 will be 9,500 meters. So they will say like, oh, maintain 9,500 meters, and you will get like, you know, your table to convert, and basically like all the equivalent levels are like you know, plus 100, so 9,500 meters, that will be the level they would give you, is the equivalent of 310 plus 100 feet. So all the levels like this work in a similar way. Why it's tricky is that lower levels is not just the case of adding like 100 feet to the feet. It's a little bit more complicated, because sometimes it's like, I don't know, I know there's one that is 256 or something like that. I think they use, yeah, 7,800 meters, and that's like 25.6, I think. So yeah, 7,800 meters is 25.6. So then you would have to look at your thing, your conversion table, and kind of work it out. You can obviously use what you have here on the PFD, but and also if you're like in the climb or in the descent, it's a more like dynamic environment. You've got, you know, it's not as if you're sitting in the cruise and they tell you, okay, you can climb now. So it's a little bit more challenging, but in the cruise it's not too bad actually. But in Russia now they're working in feet. It's just China, and I believe I was looking into it for this flight. Mongolia as well. They work in meters. And who else works in meters? I think that's pretty much it. And China, Mongolia, all of our countries are working in feet pretty much. As the kind of like, you know, aviation standard really. Feet like meters is, it's a pain in the butt. But in China they don't work meters QFE, huh? They work in meters QNH. So they work in meters altitude in relation to sea level. Whereas like in Russia they work these meters QFE, so meters like and the height over the airport, which is also a bit of a funny concept. And they will give you the QFE, which is like the altimeter setting that gives you the height over the airport. So if the airport is let's say the elevation the elevation of the airport is let's say 500 feet above sea level, when they tell you like 1,000 feet QFE, which is actually 1,500 feet above sea level. So it's, and then if you add to this meters, then it's a bit of mental gymnastic, you know. It's yeah. Kim, about 777 landing flaps. Intercept localizer between 190 and 220. Okay, glide slope with flaps 5, yeah. On 5 mile final, 5 mile final is a little bit late to take the gear and the flaps. Yeah, 5 miles is a little bit late. I think to take the you can catch the glide slope with flaps 5. Ideally, it's personally I prefer to do it with flaps 15 and in the aircraft as well, because with flaps 15 it kind of gives you a better control of the speed. But you can still do it with flaps 5. It's okay. But 5 miles is a little bit late to take the gear down and the flaps 20. I think 7 miles maybe is a good spot. 7-8 miles, because on a large aircraft like this you want to be fully configured for the landing by about like 1,000 feet, and if you only take the gear down at 5 miles, 5 miles is roughly 1,500 feet. The time you take the gear down, if you're like flaps 5 speed and you take like flaps 20, it's gonna take a while for the speed to come back a little bit, and then go for flap 30 where it's gonna take a little bit longer again. You're never gonna be stabilized at 1,000 feet. So yeah, maybe you can start configuring the gear a little bit earlier. Yeah, the flight is going well so far. We've been airborne for 3 hours and 44 minutes. I've had a couple of breaks. 3 hours and 59 since we left the gate. We are now at 70, almost 72 degrees north. So we're making our way up. And yeah, we're gonna leave Canadian airspace at the next waypoint, Dabak, going into Greenland, which is controlled by Iceland, and pretty much keep tracking northeast until we get to pretty much all the way to the top. So my chart says there for grid track calculation, which is what we have here. That's the grid. Grid track is equal to a true track plus the west longitude or the east longitude. Oh. So grid track is equal to true track plus west longitude. Good God. So let's say if we go to true. The true track is 360. So we've got 73 degrees of west longitude. Is that correct? Let's have a look. 70. So 70 and 360 will be 070. And here it says 073, so yeah, it's pretty much there. It's not entirely accurate, but it's almost there. So that's what the grid is. Then as the grid track is the true track plus the west longitude or the east longitude. There you go. Approaching Dabak, and because I entered the decimal 83 here in the legs page, at Dabak the speed is gonna increase. At the moment it's decimal 827, but it's gonna increase. Let me know, guys, if it's too technical. You know, I'm trying to kind of explain a little bit, like a few things, and it might be too technical. If it's too technical, like give me a shout and, like, you know, tell me, like, you know, to chill out a little bit. I don't want to make it like over complicated. Like today here, I mean, once again, this is like simulated, it's active sky. I don't know if the data is accurate. It's quite a bit of wind, 60 knots up here is quite, well, is relatively strong. Because usually like at these high latitudes, the wind is not very strong, it's fairly slack. So obviously like you can get like a good ground speed, and you're not gonna be affected by, like, you know, the strong jet streams like at 100, 150 knots for like hours. So, I think maybe the ground distance is maybe a little bit longer going over the top, but in terms of flight time, if there's less wind, then you're gonna obviously fly a little bit faster, and in terms of flight time, the flight will be shorter. And also, if it's easy to see as well sometimes on if you take Google Earth, for example, and you've got like a representation of the Earth, or even if you've got like at home you've got one of those what is it called, like a globe, you know, like representing the Earth. If you take like on your at home on your globe, if you take like a string and you try to link maybe Toronto to Hong Kong in the shortest line as possible, it will possibly take you like over the top. If you go like a kind of westbound on the side, maybe the distance is longer as well. I'm not sure. On Google Earth, you can try to see what is the shortest distance, what they call the Great Circle Line, and very often you can see that like the way that when you try to draw the line from like let's say like from Toronto to Hong Kong, you'll see that the shortest line will maybe take you up towards the north. RGR for lunch, yeah, thank you for the link. I'll have a look at that. The Great Circle, yeah, that's the Great Circle mapper. That's exactly it. Thank you very much for that. So you can see like the shortest way is actually taking you, yeah, pretty much on top. So then there are like a few air traffic control restrictions to bear in mind. So as I said, like we're not gonna go exactly on top. We're going to that waypoint Aberi, which then leads into the airway system in Russia. So we're not going exactly on top, but we'll be quite close. But yeah, on the Great Circle, it takes you yeah, pretty much on top, huh? From what I can see there. Does it make sense? Thank you for the link, RGR4. Yeah, it's a very good visual explanation. It's worth thousands of words. Right, so we've got 5 miles to Dapak, and you'll see here the speed is going to change to decimal 3. 4 hours into the flight. I'll check the fuel consumption here, see how we are progressing. At Dapak we should have, hold on, so keep an eye on this one here. That's it, the simulate 3. Let's change the speed. So at Dapak we'll go to the progress page here, then to position report, and at position Dapak we're there at 01, with 91.1. We should be there with 90.4. So the fuel is increasing actually, but we still are 2 minutes late because we got there at 01, and we should have been there at after 3 hours and 58 minutes. So yeah, we're about 2 minutes late on the flight plan, but we are 700 kilos extra, so it's not too bad. So now we're basically over the water, between kind of the very north of Canada, like all those islands north of Canada, and ahead is Greenland. So we kind of left Canada behind now, and we are like heading for Greenland basically. Wow. Yeah, it's a bit of a thought process, and when you think about it, like in real is, say like, oh, we're gonna go over like the top of the earth, man. It's yeah. So it's still showing the heading reference as normal. I'm quite curious to see when it's gonna switch into true. And our grid is 076 position. We're kind of, yeah, flying along 70 degrees west and now 74 degrees north. Only 15 degrees roughly to get to the top. Fantastic. The total air temperature, which is the sum of the air outside the aircraft and the heat generated by the aircraft traveling through the air, is minus 14 degrees Celsius, and the outside air temperature, if we go to the progress page here on the FMC and go to the next page, so go to page 2 out of 4, the outside temperature is here, the SAT, static air temperature, and it's minus 45. So yeah, it's not very cold, so it's not an issue. We're still only at 31,000 feet as well, so it's alright. So I don't anticipate it's gonna be a problem. But obviously it's like summertime, so